Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm Old Silky.
And before we jump into tonight's episode, we want to remind you to go to snagsandsilky.com. Check out the Click Pit. We got all kinds of links from previous episodes. Whenever you're looking for a movie to watch or a book to read or some music to check out, you can just go to the Click Pit and browse through there. Every episode, we put related links in there from all kinds of cool shit that we're talking about, rapping about on this here podcast. So go check it out. Download the Kindle sample of the book that we wrote, Sink or Swim. That's fucking hilarious. You read the sample, you'll be addicted, and you'll have to read the whole book, and it's only $6. And check out the store where we got t-shirts, we got hoodies, we got decals, and we got one other thing I forget. Mugs, yeah, mugs. Coffee mugs, and all kinds of Snags and Silky merch on there. Can't live without it. Tomorrow's Arbor Day, I think, so you gotta do that real quick, or Bastille Day or something. Tomorrow is the summer solstice, something. So jump on there. I'm going to turn the mic over now to Ol Silky, and he is going to introduce our episode. He's going to introduce the episode, but then I want to tell a story. Okay. Just give him a little hint of what this episode's about.
Tonight's episode, we did an episode on Peter Boyle, a really amazing character actor, and tonight's episode is on another amazing character actor, John Cazale, who, if you look at his run, he was in 5 movies. All 5 were nominated for Academy Award. He did these 5 movies in 7 years, and that was his run. And
then he fucking kicked the bucket.
Then he had cancer.
So, but he banged Meryl Streep in between there a little bit. Yeah.
And there's a controversy on that, which I'll touch on in the show.
Okay. Before we jump into this, though, so this is kind of along the lines of our Crispin Glover episode and our Peter Boyle episode. We're hipping you to some deep cut shit when it comes to actors we dig. But before we get into this, speaking of character actors, I just have to hip you cats to, there's this movie Hemingway and Gellhorn, and it's about Hemingway's relationship with a war correspondent, Martha Gellhorn. I'm being reminded here by the Peanut Gallery that she became one of his wives, but and it's an interesting movie, if you're into that kind of stuff. But I'm watching this flick, and there's a character actor in there who plays a director who goes to Spain with Hemingway during the Civil War, and the director's getting footage of the Civil War, and I'm like, that is hilarious. I'm like, this dude reminds me so much of Lars Ulrich from Metallica. It's crazy. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, finally, halfway through the movie, I'm just like, what is this guy's name that reminds me of Lars Ulrich so much? I look it up, and it's fucking Lars Ulrich. Lars Ulrich was an actor in a movie with Nicole Kidman about Hemingway in like 2012. Silky, who's the biggest Metallica freak on the planet, never heard of it. I never heard of it. I'm pretty up on Metallica. And
there's a surprise for sure.
Totally random, and it's not like he's done a lot of acting since. And he's good at it. He's got a foreign accent, and it's a pretty major supporting role. He's in there all throughout the first half of the movie in all kinds of scenes, acting his ass off. So it's just a little tip for you cats, some deep cut shit to check out. Hemingway and Gellhorn. It's on the Max platform right now, so check that shit out. Now, Old Silky is going to launch into John Cazale, a little deeper dive on this cat. Take it away, Maestro.
So one thing I want to mention, you got character actors throughout Hollywood history. Character actors tend to have the one-liners. Sometimes they'll steal the scene. Um, I wanted to kind of give you a top 10 character actors. What's funny is I did the Google search, top 10 character actors, and they list Al Pacino. He has played a lot of um, specific type of character in a lot of movies before he became a leading actor. Robert De Niro, Stephen Tobolowsky is somebody you would recognize. Clint Eastwood, Danny Trejo, Gary Oldman, Jack Nicholson, even Marlon Brando. What's funny is below Brando, they mention Anthony Hopkins, and it's a picture of Denzel Washington.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So that's how amazing Anthony Hopkins is.
That he can look like
That he
Denzel
can
Washington.
portray.
That's some method acting right there.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's
intense.
hardcore. Yeah.
Steve Buscemi. There's just so many.
John
Clancy
Turturro.
Brown.
John Turturro.
Yeah. It's just funny.
And these are just modern day cats. You know, when I was obsessed with film noirs and I was watching all these film noirs from the 40s and 50s, there's a ton of people that keep cropping up in there. Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Elijah something. I forget his name, but he's in a lot of those movies with Bogart. He's always getting slapped around by Bogart.
Yeah, the femme fatale would always kind of duplicate, or they would be typecast. That's the danger, is the typecasting.
Yeah.
But the character actor, I think, will continue to just be amazing. It's nothing to be ashamed of. We can't all look as good as Snags and I.
Yeah, be leading man material like we are.
And it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, you listeners who don't stack up to us, you're the character actors in our lives. There's nothing wrong with that.
The world needs ditch diggers too.
Exactly. Yeah.
To quote Ted Knight, who another character actor.
Yeah. From the amazing masterpiece Caddyshack, which we need to do some episodes on some of these classic Caddyshack, Big Lebowski.
One off most quotable. That's got to be one of the most quoted guy movies going.
That one and the Big Lebowski.
Yeah, it's a lot of that. So John Cazale was born in August of 1935, and he died March 13th, 1978.
Let me just jump in here. The cat who was in all those Bogart movies, Elisha Cook Jr.
Oh yeah, Elisha Cook.
Elisha Cook Jr.
Yeah.
He lived up in the mountains. He didn't have anything to do with Hollywood. And whenever John Huston or somebody would want him for a movie, he'd just drive into town, do the movie,
That's
and then
fantastic.
Get back up to the cabin.
He was ice pick on Magnum PI.
Oh, there you go.
Mainly
showing up in the later
I believe the role was there, and Tom Selleck was like, "We got to get somebody good for this," and
we should do. Maybe we'll do an episode on him at some point.
He's a great one. He was in a ton of good movies.
Yeah, Big Sleep, all that stuff.
Yeah. So John Cazale, there's a really fantastic documentary about him that really profiles him pretty well, and I believe you get a couple independent short films that he's in.
Where does one find this documentary?
If you punch in John Cazale, let's see if it lists his. So he's in a thing called The American Way in 1962, then something called NYPD in 1968. Um,
So
and then you've got
there's a
his 5.
there's a HBO documentary called "I Knew It Was You,"
That's it.
rediscovering John Cazale. So
Yeah.
wherever that's streamed, that's the
That's
one.
on HBO. You can still watch that. It is really good. Take what we talk about tonight and check that out, because that is it's a great documentary. It's going to make you want to go back and check these films out. Um, so he basically does two little things. He was in some theater things, became friends with Al Pacino. When Pacino gets cast in The Godfather, I would say Pacino, much like Spencer Tracy, who really went to bat for Bogart to get into Hollywood. Pacino did the same for Cazale, and so The Godfather was 72. 2 years later, The Conversation. That same year, The Godfather Part II. Dog Day Afternoon with Pacino in 75. And then The Deer Hunter came out in 78. Um, I believe it was released after he had died. So that was it. But to most actors aren't even in one movie that gets nominated for an Academy Award. And this is back when the awards went to really solid movies.
So the documentary is on YouTube. We'll link it from the clip pit.
Yeah, I believe it's on HBO too.
Yeah, but
Um,
it's free on YouTube.
yeah, if you don't have HBO, but so like I say, most actors aren't even in one movie that gets nominated. Cazale, every movie he was in, all 5 of those over his last 7 years of life, um, all 5 of them were nominated. The Godfather 1 and 2 are possibly among the greatest movies ever made. The Conversation is tremendous. There's some great, and Snags is going to talk about The Conversation and Dog Day Afternoon. Um, and The Deer Hunter is one of the greatest. It's just amazing that John Cazale would, his whole filmography would be this stellar. Not many actors have this kind of run, 5 in a row. Similar to like Dio putting out stellar album after album with 3
Yeah.
different bands.
Whenever I think of John
Crazy.
Cazale, I think of Ronnie James Dio right
Yeah,
away.
they both had the same height. They were the same height.
Yeah,
They actually went to different schools together.
yeah, yeah. They're not related.
No.
That's why I think of them all the time.
Um, so I want to talk about The Godfather. I'm going to kind of do 2 birds with 1 stone. The Godfather saga is a single epic that combined The Godfather from 72 and The Godfather 2 from 74, edits them to
And
run.
there were no more Godfather movies made after that at
No,
all.
no, everything else is an imposter and don't believe it.
There was nothing
Um,
made after that.
no. So what the saga was, they were edited together to run chronologically to depict the rise of the fictitious Corleone crime family. This would have been Coppola's first attempt at tinkering with The Godfather, essentially a director's cut. It was called The Complete Epic, 1901 to 1959. And like I
When
said,
was that? When was that made, and how was it
it
released?
was it was released on television in the late 70s. I believe 78 was like a week long thing. And to kind of fill in the gaps. Now he had the opportunity to do so. He decided to put it chronologically and then insert scenes that had been cut from the movie, things that were just, in a way, it's the way to see it the most complete. Um, but to me, The Godfather is possibly the greatest movie of all time.
I don't
The
know. This weekend I saw Frankenhooker, and that
oh
was pretty
oh
damn good.
that's gonna,
It really
yeah.
was.
But the unrivaled casting, the iconic film score, breathtaking cinematography. It had such a rich, complex story. Um, and just a few. Those are just a few factors contributing to this legacy. Um, it's just a masterpiece.
There's a
I was.
great mini series about the making of The Godfather too, as well. Do you remember
Mhm.
the name of that?
It's called The Offer.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. To
It's
use
a
our
great way
favorite
to
word,
see what they went through just to get it made.
crazy
Um,
story.
but the movie, it's just such a sophisticated story. It touches on loyalty and greed within a family. Um, and you say, well, what it actually covered a few genres, the crime, the gangster crime genre, period drama. It's a tragedy. Um, a noir film with its sepia toned colors. It just portrays the past in such a vivid detail. You go back to Italy in 1901. Vito's father's murdered for disagreeing with the local mafia don, and his mother takes him to talk to the don. She gets killed. He escapes to America. Um, and then he takes over the local mafia boss after murdering the gangster that's abusing everyone in the neighborhood. Um, and cinematographer Gordon Willis, he portrays every actor, prop, and setting on the screen with such a craft, a distinctive Rococo style, is what the article I took notes from talked about. Um, and it elevates the storytelling. It brings the audience in deeper. Was all Gordon Willis throughout. If you watch that first movie, um, Vito Corleone is like this soft-spoken guy, and he just meets out problems in the neighborhood while also raising his family. And that compassionate portrayal of family ritual and honor is a shocking look at the chieftains of crime. Some film noirs are poorly acted or chock full of violence, gunfire for the sake of exploitation. And I felt this was a slow approach, almost as if it's being painted in front of you. Um, just the fullness and characterization is just not matched in the art of cinema. What do you think?
I think it's a killer flick, man. Let's talk about John Cazale's character in that.
Yeah, he plays um, Fredo, who is just a very sweet young guy. There's a scene as him as a baby where he's kind of sickly, and I believe in the Godfather book he was just kind of shy and not he didn't have the aggression that the older boy Sonny um, played, and played by James Caan. And then Michael Corleone is Al Pacino, who eventually takes over the family. Um, but throughout, the movie starts with Connie's wedding. You meet all the characters, but Fredo is like everybody's favorite. But to hear Fredo tell it, I believe it's a scene in Godfather 2 where he's feels he got stepped over. that it was like send Fredo to the airport. He gets they kind of don't know what to do with him, and he's drinking heavily, and they send
He's
him out to
he's
Vegas.
very. If there's anybody here, newer generation, I'm sure everybody listening to this has seen The Godfather, but a comparable character from a series that Silky hasn't wisened up to its greatness yet is the brother in Peaky Blinders. So you got the main cat in Peaky Blinders who runs the family, and the older brother who's just not alpha. He's the beta
Hmm.
personality,
Hmm.
and just feels like he's being passed over. There's a little bit of black sheep thing going on, and that's Fredo in The Godfather as well. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, he's told never take sides against the family. And The Godfather's chock full of quotes that are used constantly, imitated as far as like um, Family Guy, The Simpsons. So many movies have pulled quips and things from The Godfather.
Yeah, good flick. Good flick.
It really is, and again, it's like a painting being drawn in front of you. It just slowly unravels, and you get so much interplay with the different characters. It's like a period piece. You've got a lot of I hate to say cliches of a gangster film, but they're also the things that endear you to those movies. Um,
And the funny thing is, if you watch The Offer, if that's an accurate depiction of how all this went down, Coppola thought he was selling out. He was basically hired on as the director of this picture. It
mhm.
wasn't his vision, like Apocalypse Now or The Conversation. It was a project already in progress, and they basically just hired him on as the director. And this was like right after the '60s have ended. Everybody's very idealistic, and he really dragged his feet. He thought he was selling out, and he didn't really.
Mhm.
His heart wasn't in it at first, and then they got a couple things happen. He basically spent a lot of time with Mario Puzo, who wrote the novel, and working on the script, and basically got inspired that way. And then they got Brando, and then he was totally on board, and then it became his baby.
Yeah. This was the one thing I thought about with The Godfather 1 and 2 is that it's a metaphor for American capitalism in the tale of a great king with three sons. And it's very Shakespearean on that level. A lot of betrayal. It's just such a
Yeah, and on that front, Fredo John Cazale's character is definitely a victim, or part of that whole Shakespearean kind of tragedy stuff.
yeah.
And for the 1% of you who haven't seen it, we won't get into it, but it's a very memorable role. The thing about John Cazale is, I think the three character actors we've profiled so far, Crispin Glover is an absolute scene stealer. Every movie he's in, he really stands out because of his crazy acting, and he's a total scene stealer.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's always some quirkiness.
yeah, and Peter Boyle is somewhere in between. He's a real energetic guy, and he's got a lot of memorable lines and stuff. He's not as a nuclear personality as Crispin Glover. And John Cazale, I think, is on the other end of the spectrum. He serves the movie. He's in these things.
Yeah.
He's not a scene stealer. He's got a very subtle acting style. He just figures out who is this character supposed to be, what is their place in the story, and then he fucking nails it. So
Very much like Steve Buscemi, where he might only be in one scene.
yeah,
It doesn't it is what it is. Uh, to quote um, the Deer Hunter,
yeah.
this is this. But so the oldest son had Vito Corleone's passion and aggressiveness. The second son, being Fredo, had his sweet nature and childlike charms, and the third son, Michael, his intelligence, cunning, and coldness. And then Connie is the daughter who spirals out of control, but she comes in and becomes the foundation for Michael later in life. And the movie is like an onion. There's just so many layers. Um, there's not a lot of movies like The Godfather. And then to watch it this way as one complete chronological telling, you you just get such a powerful presentation that way. And as much as the actors, the cinematography, and the film score, all three are just undeniable. You can't watch this movie and not be amazed at all three uh, factors that make up this movie. So the Godfather's just an offer I simply can't refuse. That's my
There you go.
Godfather thing, and
So
that was only presented on VHS in even as late as the 90s. You could get the Godfather epic on VHS. Um, I found this on eBay on DVD, and they're two DVD-Rs, but they are done with care to where when you have it in, you can't tell that it's a straight bootleg. I don't know if they got this from a laser disc.
hmm,
It's just cool to have it this way, and I hate that Coppola has had ample opportunity with the advent, of the Blu-ray. Um, he's just
streaming.
never gone back to this epic, and there's some great scenes that were cut from the movie, and it's just a shame that you don't get a chance to see it the way I feel. It's not as confusing to watch it uh, chronologically,
Yeah.
um, without the flashbacks, all that stuff. But either way, one and two are just top shelf cinema.
Yeah. And
So
there weren't any others, so that's
yeah,
So The Godfather's released in 1972. Um then Coppola moves on to a more personal project, which is The Conversation. Um, brings along a couple actors from The Godfather, John Cazale and Robert Duvall. Um,
and Hackman had auditioned in for The Godfather.
well, Hackman got the starring role in this one.
Yeah,
Uh,
I honestly I think Coppola didn't quite want him for Godfather, but found something to put him in.
Also, another Coppola bit part actor, this guy by the name of Harrison Ford,
Yes,
has a
another one.
small role in this, like he did in Apocalypse Now. Um,
Harrison Ford was actually a roadie for the Doors.
Dag, yo,
Is that not? And there's one photo if you look it up. Jim's walking by and you see Harrison Ford standing uh, in the photo. It's
that's pretty wild.
hilarious.
Yeah, he was also a carpenter. I think he got cast in Star Wars. He's like working on a
Yeah,
doorway or a cabinet in the offices at the studio, and they're like, "Oh, what about you? You should audition for Star Wars or
yeah.
some story like that." He was a carpenter for a
And
long
he's got a great role in American Graffiti, and of course that was George Lucas. But it was just kind of he's the older drag racer at the end, and then he does have a kind of a walk on bit part in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah. So so this film also has Terry Garr and Cindy Williams of Laverne and Shirley fame.
Mm-hmm.
She was adorably cute at this stage of her life when she's in this film. The film revolves around a surveillance expert and the moral dilemma he faces when his recordings reveal a potential murder. So the backstory of this guy. Oh, El Condor in the house. El Condor, you got to give a shout out to all of our fans.
Say John Cazale rules.
How about I just do a sponsor?
What?
A sponsor,
Hey,
yeah.
Dead air. Go.
Go,
Talk.
go. Give it.
Just talk, dude.
What you been up to lately?
Snags and Silky thing, you know.
Okay, go. Do it.
The merchandise shop, what was that called again?
Snagsandsilky.com.
Snagsandsilky.com.
Go to the website and buy the merch.
Very
so
nice.
we can get money.
Very nice.
Yes.
And buy stuff and pay rent.
Yeah. How can you refuse that, people?
We need to pay the rent.
Pay the mortgage.
You gotta bring him
the mortgage.
No,
it's called rent.
No, we don't pay rent. It's a mortgage.
Oh.
So from now on, we bring on El Condor to pimp the website every
Pimp the
episode.
website. Yes. All right.
Good job, buddy.
All right.
Anyways, I heard that there's a King Kong anime. I'm gonna watch it. It's interesting.
Fantastic.
All right, King Kong anime.
El Condor, ladies and gentlemen.
So the backstory you find out in this flick is that it's set in San Francisco, but he apparently lived back east, I think in New York, and he basically just gets hired by rich people or government agencies or whoever has the money to spy on people and get recordings of, bug them and get recordings of whatever they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this backstory thing where he bugged. There was some guy who was running, some rich guy who was running some high up scheme, making a lot of money, and the only person who knew about it was his accountant.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time they would talk about it was out on a boat. And the boat was apparently supposedly bug proof. And Hackman is this genius surveillance expert, and he somehow found a way to bug their conversations when they're out on the lake. And so whatever they were talking about got out, and the guy got caught or busted, and he assumed that the accountant had narked because in his mind, there was no way their conversations could have been monitored. He murdered the accountant and his family. And this is because of work that Gene Hackman's character did.
Right. And
so this is like in New York, and he splits New York, goes to San Francisco, keeps working in surveillance. He's a Catholic, so there's a scene where he goes to confession. He's like, confessing that some of the work he does may have caused some people to get hurt, and he's real conflicted about it, but he's a genius at what he does, and he obviously loves it.
Yeah.
So he gets a new job where he's at the opening scene, he's surveilling a conversation that's out in the middle of the city square. It's Cindy Williams and some guy I think she's having an affair with, and really intricately filmed, and it's supposedly really hard to bug a conversation out in the middle of a crowd. And he has a bunch of different people with like shotgun mics, telescope
all around the square. Yeah.
And then one guy following them around, and he edits it all together to get the full conversation. And starts to realize as the movie goes on that the guy that hired him to do this is played by Robert Duvall, and he's like some big executive somewhere at a company the guy who's having the affair with his wife, I think, works at the same company.
Yeah, she does.
And Harrison Ford is kind of his henchman, and basically Hackman starts having, as he's listening to the conversation, they talk about how they could be killed, right? He'd kill us if he had the chance, blah, blah, blah. And starts to starts to have second thoughts about turning over the tapes, even though it's a $15,000 job, which back in '74 was a lot of money, still a lot of money.
Yeah.
And Harrison Ford's trying to get the tapes from him, and basically sends there's a convention in town of wiretappers and buggers, and he's partying with a bunch of those guys, and they get some prostitutes, and one of the prostitutes spends the night with him at his studio. The party's at his studio where he does all his surveillance work, and she sleeps with him, and then he falls asleep. He wakes up the next morning, she's gone, and the tapes are gone. Turns out Harrison Ford's character hired her to get the tapes. And
It's the power of the vagina.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Many of us have.
Yep. And so basically, he busted a nut, but he lost the tapes, so it's a trade-off. So,
and what did you say? This was kind of like blow up.
This was inspired by the movie Blow Up, which is a
great movie.
Yeah, Italian flick about a guy who's spying on some people and takes a photograph and discovers something in the photograph. I haven't seen it in forever.
Oh, a murder. A woman's being killed in the trees in that park, and
it gets captured in the photograph.
Yeah. But and the interesting
about, I've been reminded by my my wife here.
The interesting thing about Blow Up is you also get the Yardbirds play in a scene in the 60s version of Blow Up. The Yardbirds are in a bar scene with Jimmy Page.
That's pretty badass. And De Palma did his audio version of Blow Up as well, called Blow Out, with John Travolta.
Yeah.
And that's another sound version of Blow Up. Blow Up's all about the photograph, and the conversation and Blowout are about the sound kind of version of that, someone discovering something. So and it was also inspired by a real surveillance technology expert named Martin Kaiser. So he was partially inspired by the whole thing too. And interestingly enough, the confession scene, Coppola says he included that because he feels like that was one of the earliest forms of surveillance, was confession.
Interesting.
They would invade your privacy.
He touches on a weird kind of lift a rock in the creepy crawlies. These surveillance guys go to a convention for all these gadgets, and at one point the guy plays a trick on Hackman's character. Records him with a pen that Hackman has in his pocket, and you can tell Hackman is furious that somebody would trick him. And recorded just a test conversation. It wasn't like Hackman gave anything away, but his character is enraged at the audacity.
Well, he's seeing this woman early in the film, and he won't tell her much about what he does. He's kind of ashamed of what he does.
Right.
And he basically just won't let her in emotionally, and she basically dumps him.
Yeah.
And he's confiding to the prostitute, not knowing that she's a spy, about all his vulnerabilities, that he's having this hard time with this woman. And then he finds out that conversation was recorded by one of his pals as a joke. His pal starts playing it back, and when he's the subject of the surveillance, he's not very happy about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant reaction with that type of character. That it's okay for him to when he's working, that's his job, but to fuck around and tape him, is a whole other
right. And
thing.
So John Cazale is basically his assistant, Stanley Ross, and basically um, he's just basically it's basically just his assistant in the movie, but he's in there the whole time. He's like the main sidekick of Gene Hackman. And there's an interesting dynamic that happens at one point where Hackman won't let him in on what's going on. Stanley's like, why aren't we turning in the tapes? And Hackman won't talk to him about it.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Stanley just storms off and ends up going and taking a job with the guy who's at the convention who ended up recording Gene Hackman in that conversation. The guy's a bit of an obnoxious prick. And so to add insult to injury, his assistant quits and goes and works for him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing. I mean, Cazale's, I think it's not as big as he's in the movie the whole time, but there's not a lot of personality to this character. He's just kind of the assistant.
But he presents just the normal guy, like you believe it because he's not overselling the role.
Oh no, he fits into the role perfectly.
Yeah,
and he is kind of prodding Hackman to do some introspection by asking him questions that Hackman doesn't want to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Inadvertently prodding him. But yeah, I mean he's the main sidekick in the movie, along with Gene Hackman. It's a very interesting flick, and I would say of all of Cazale's roles, this is probably the least interesting role for him. The next one is a bit more interesting. Fredo is pretty interesting, and Deer Hunter is pretty interesting. But
I think he'll forever be remembered as Fredo.
Yeah.
And then Dog Day Afternoon is a really good character.
Yeah. So but the conversation is just a great flick. Totally worth watching. I think it's streaming on Max right now, also Amazon Prime. Totally recommend that. And then so basically Godfather comes out in 72, Conversation comes out in 74. Also in 74, The Godfather 2 comes out, all John Cazale. And then 75, I mean, these are just one right after another. Dog Day Afternoon, directed by Sidney Lumet, comes out. This is a really interesting flick. I remember us watching this back
loosely
in the day.
A true story.
Yeah, based on a true story, a crazy true story, which we'll get into. And I remember we watched all these movies back in high school. We marathoned this stuff along with like Blue Velvet and Taxi Driver and Eraserhead. There was a Clockwork Orange. There was a core group of movies we would just throw on the VCR.
I think it was a time of discovery for us. With you had a VCR and the opportunity to then go and rent these movies you'd heard of but maybe hadn't seen or hadn't seen in a while. There was definitely it wasn't like a race against time, but you wanted. I remember wanting to see every movie that was almost required. Like you have to see The Godfather. You have to see Taxi Driver.
We were growing up. We were in high school at the time, and we're in the middle of one of the suckiest movie decades on the planet. You had underground shit like Spike Lee and what's that? Who's the guy? Jim Jarmusch, and you had people like that doing some interesting stuff. But mainstream movies
were in love with John Hughes, and
and
those have a place. But
John Hughes has his own genius. Breakfast Club is a fucking masterpiece. But that's the better stuff of the mainstream movies of the age. A lot of it was just crap. And so and on the comedy front, there's a lot of good stuff. John Candy's hilarious, but it's not the serious, gritty crime drama stuff like Dog Day Afternoon and
the 7-Ups,
Taxi Driver, and the 7-Ups, and Vanishing Point. The 70s was just amazing for.
There were a lot of Roy Scheider was in a whole run of just gritty cop procedural movies. Even Bullet with Steve McQueen.
So was
A
Gene
little
Hackman.
murky, a little confusing, but just amazing movies that you can watch multiple times.
French Connection.
French Connection.
A lot of good stuff.
Holy shit.
Anyways, so Dog Day Afternoon is one of those, and I remember us watching it and being kind of inspired. And we made what was our masterpiece?
Oh, the
Crash Course in Brain
Sodomy.
That was somewhat inspired by Dog Day Afternoon because just the intensity of it. Although our movie was kind of fucking stupid.
No. Crash Course in Brain Sodomy was.
It was inspired by W.C. Fields.
Yes, it was an ode
Dog
to.
Day Afternoon.
It was an ode to Laurel and Hardy. I mean, just so many.
Yeah. And we couldn't show it in film festivals or anything because we filled the soundtrack up with fucking Metallica and
Pink Floyd and
all kinds of shit. Yeah. Anyways, enough about our shit. Dog Day Afternoon comes out in 1975, biographical crime drama. It's based on true story about these cats, John Wojciech and Salvatore Notorioli. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Wow.
But John and Sal, who robbed a bank in the Chase Manhattan Bank in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, I would say that's Wojciech and Salvatore Natural.
There, something like that.
Yeah.
And so they rob a bank. They take a bunch of hostages. And then one thing after another starts going wrong. The first thing is there's not a lot of money in the bank. They thought they were robbing the bank right after the money drop off, but it turns out they were robbing the bank right after the money pickup.
So let me interact here. Even today, I worked with a guy who's been everything from a sniper for the CIA, allegedly. He's just a badass.
This is a guy we were once going to interview on the podcast.
No, it's for someone else.
And you work with a lot of interesting people.
Yeah, there's some really heavy dudes that are now working where I'm at. This guy, we were just talking, and I said, I always keep robbing a bank in my back pocket for, possible things that you can do down the road, and he said,
well, just start a porn studio.
There's that. But he says that if you go try to rob a bank right now, at any point, they only really keep about $5,000 on hand. You're not going to get,
Well, it's because everything's digital now.
Everything's digital, wired.
Stuff with your card,
You're just not going to get enough money to maybe get out of the, the ideal thing is they always want to rob the bank, demand a helicopter, get to the airport and disappear. And you're just never going to do that.
Well, that wasn't even their first plan. So here's what happens. Sal, John, and Stevie, their little wimpy sidekick, they run in. They're starting to rob the bank. Stevie immediately chickens out, like within the first 5 minutes, and just hands his gun over to I guess his name is Sonny in the movie. Hands his gun over to Sonny, and takes off. So then it's just Sal and Sonny left. Sonny is played by Al Pacino. Sal is our hero here, John Cazale, the character actor.
And John Cazale wants to just kill everybody. He's very unstable.
Yeah, we're getting into that. So basically, the first thing goes wrong is their third compatriot bails out immediately. Then there's not a lot of money in the safe, just like $10,000 or something, not the millions they were expecting. No, it's fucking $1,000. Yeah, $1,100 is all that's in the safe. And so they then Sonny burns the register in the trash can, which basically I guess is a record of deposits and withdrawals for that day. I'm not sure why he burns the register. Probably prevents them tracking something or other. Well, when he burns the register, it a bunch of smoke starts coming out of the building, and then people outside get suspicious and immediately call the authorities. And one of the guard in there starts freaking out and getting stressed out and has an asthma attack. And then the next thing they know, the building is surrounded by like hundreds of cops and they're stuck. And that's when they think, well, they were going to rob the place and get in the car and take off. Now they're going to demand a helicopter to the airport.
Yeah, that's kind of the cliche in all these bank heist movies. You know, they want
a jet to take them out of the country.
Yeah.
And the cops are, negotiating with them on that. And basically, yeah, so Sonny's the main guy, Al Pacino's character, and he's negotiating with the cops and everything and trying to work a way out of this. Sal is just this brooding, pissed off motherfucker with a rifle sitting in the corner, and he just keeps and at one point Sonny threatens to start throwing bodies. They got a bunch of hostages. The bank manager, the security guard, and the rest are women employees. And he says, if you guys don't listen to me and get me my helicopter, we're going to start throwing bodies out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And or out the door. And Sal walks up to him and says, you really mean that? He's like, because I'll fucking do it. Sal's just, you get the sense they were both in prison together in the past. And Sal is not going back to prison. It's like, he said that, and at one point he says, we said, Sal's talking to Sonny, and he says, we said we're doing this or we're gonna die trying to get out. There's no compromise. You meant that, right? Because I'm not going back to prison. So Sal is do or die. I'm ready to kill some people if we need to.
He's basically give a fuck.
Yeah, and so he's the wild card. And Cazale just does a great job playing him. And the cops turn off the air conditioning in the building, and by the end, everybody's sweating, and there's just a lot of intensity. And then the big twist is, it comes out that the reason why Sonny is robbing this bank is because he's got boyfriend who wants gender reassignment surgery, and he was robbing the bank to get money for his boyfriend to get a sex change.
But meanwhile, the guy's wife is outside. It's such a
he's married to a woman and has kids, and then he's also he actually married the boyfriend and calls the boyfriend his wife as well.
Yeah, and pretty controversial for 1975.
Yeah, but it's what happened.
Oh yeah,
so that's why they had to make a movie about it. It's freaking crazy,
just over the top. It would even be wild now.
And then you get
trans stuff.
It would fit right in. Yeah. So then you get some comedic aspect too here from Sal, because Sal, the reporting on the news, once that comes out, because and the reason it came out is because Sonny demanded to see his wife, and they're like, tell us where we can find your wife, and he sent them to find the male wife.
Yeah,
and that's where it comes out. So then the local news stations are saying, 2 homosexuals are holding up to such and such bank, and Sal gets disturbed by that because he's not gay, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, tell the news it's just one homosexual. I'm not gay. It's fucking
so good.
Hilarious. And so basically, it seems like they're going to get what they want. And do we want to give away the ending here? Or
no, make them
this
watch.
This is a less less watched movie than Godfather. So basically, it gets really interesting, and it's got a pretty powerful ending. And we
And I
won't
will
tell
say,
you what happens.
Dog Day Afternoon is a huge contrast to what you've seen of John Cazale, because people only knew him as Fredo.
He
And
was
here,
always this kind of either tepid, no personality guy, or this kind of weak. He has a personality, but he's
yeah,
a beta personality.
but here he's a character you would not really want to know.
Yeah, here he's a real fucking angry motherfucker.
Loose cannon type.
Yeah.
So
It's a great flick. It's really it's intense, it's suspenseful, and it's funny. So
yeah.
there you have that. That's Dog Day Afternoon. So so this is almost every year. 72 Godfather, 74 The Conversation, 74 Godfather 2, 75 Dog Day Afternoon, right? That's 4 in a row. They're all nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
3 years later, Deer Hunter comes out, directed by Michael Cimino.
But he probably started that in 76, and
Knowing Michael Cimino, who's like one of the most tedious filmmakers ever, it takes a million
may have
takes,
taken 3 years to make.
waits all day for the perfect lighting before he shoots a scene.
Yeah.
They probably started filming that right after Dog Day Afternoon.
They may have started filming it in 1970. And
yeah, 1923. You never know. And Deer Hunter comes out in 78. Another Best Picture. Did that win Best Picture?
They were all of those were nominated. This movie is just so good. It got Best Actor, Christopher Walken, Best
It
Director.
won Best Picture. Deer
Michael
Hunter
Cimino.
won Best Picture.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Peter Zinner, Best Film Editing. Yeah. So
let's talk about Deer Hunter in general. Why don't you? I've been talking a lot lately. Why don't you kind of summarize it? Then we'll zoom in on Cazale's role.
Deer Hunter, much like The Godfather, there's a huge wedding scene in Deer Hunter. What's funny is that song "You're Just Too Good to Be True" by Frankie, that was in the oh, son of a bitch, I can't think of the guy's name. Frankie Valli. It was a 1967 hit, but it's used in that movie. And bizarrely, growing up and watching The Deer Hunter, I always hated that song, and it seemed to follow me. I would be anywhere, and it would just come on. And you'd be like, damn, there's that song again. To where now it doesn't bother me, but it's funny and that's a huge part of the movie where all the guys.
Well, that was originally your Shiny Happy People.
Yeah. Another horrific song. But no. So the Deer Hunter is centered in Pennsylvania. These blue collar guys. You get the sense that they've known each other forever, working in the factories there, and they would go hunting up in, they were steel workers, but they would go hunting, and they're about to go off to the Vietnam War. So 3 of the guys go. John Cazale doesn't go. So that's a rift, almost like Fredo is they're all going and he's not, but it starts just in that town, and all the supporting actors. George Zunza is like the bartender. Meryl Streep is just they're all kind of around her. They all know her. They all kind of have a thing about her. I believe De Niro and Meryl Streep in that movie are a couple. But
in real life, John Cazale was hitting that.
John Cazale, and then right after Cazale dies, Meryl Streep was living with Cazale. She had, she's still in that same house, and she gets a knock on the door. I believe it was in person. I don't think it was a phone call. There's a woman there who was actually John Cazale's wife.
Oh shit!
Saying,
So he was married when he was living with Meryl Streep.
Yes, and
Damn.
yeah, and for someone to have passed away, and you're mourning them, and you're living, surrounding yourself with all these things, and then to find out there's another woman, and that other woman is a wife.
Yeah.
Makes
But
it
he never mentioned that he was married.
no, and this woman's like, who are you? And she's in her own mourning and trying to track down, somehow she figures out there that Cazale has this apartment somewhere else, and she's like, what the hell? So that was an interesting thing about Cazale. But Deer Hunter was the penultimate Vietnam movie. It came out in 78, as well as Coppola's.
No, Apocalypse Now was 79.
79.
Yeah.
But
I
you
saw
had
that in the theater. I saw
you had
Apocalypse Now in the theater at Lenox Square.
you had Coming Home. I mean, there were a lot of
Yeah.
late 70s Vietnam, dealing with the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
It plagued the decade, really. A lot of people. I remember a guy in our neighborhood. I was friends. His name was Mike Johnson, I think. But I would go over to his house, and his dad was always in the backyard, and basically his dad just stayed out there under the trees, away from everyone. And for some reason, only a few of us would go back in the backyard and say hello to his dad. But you got the feeling like the dad never came inside. I'm sure that's not true, but it just the guy, he had been in Vietnam and was dealing with a lot of shit.
So Stan in the movie is one of their friends back home,
Yeah,
and he's got this like reckless, impulsive personality, and somewhat erratic, and just it's adding tension to the whole social dynamic, basically.
yeah, and they're Christopher Walken and John Savage and De Niro go over to Vietnam, and at one point they all get captured, and they're in a POW camp, and just the one of the most intense scenes. They are forced to play Russian roulette while these Vietnamese soldiers place bets and whatnot. And the movie actually caught some negative play when it was revealed that this whole scene was just made up, that was not based on something that happened. However, Japanese soldiers had tortured Chinese and American soldiers. There's a lot of things that went on over there.
John McCain can't lift his arms.
Yeah,
You know, shit happened.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of bad shit went on, and so maybe this didn't happen, but it was certainly within the realms of what went on. It tracked well, and was very very memorable. You watch those scenes, and then um, they get away, but it's they escape, and they make it back to America, but they lose Christopher Walken's character, and De Niro goes back to try and bring him home, and finds him after the war, finds him in one of these betting halls where they're now placing bets on doing Russian roulette, and De Niro's character faces off in front of Christopher Walken's character, and just such a memorable scene where De Niro's looking at Christopher Walken across this smoky, table, and he says, "Is this what you want? Is this what you want?" And it's just so powerful.
And what's sad is both of those guys have become jokes.
Yeah,
those were two brilliant actors, and now they just play somebody's crazy uncle. And Adam
yeah,
Sandler.
I don't. Walken has done so many amazing roles. Dogs of War, right?
Yeah, he's done what fucking what's the Stephen King one?
True Romance. Dead Zone.
Dead Zone. Yeah, Walken was brilliant. So was De Niro, and all De Niro does now is just somebody's wacky grandpa, or the dad and Meet the Parents, and then
I will say De Niro's one of De Niro's last movies that were really good was Midnight Run. Is a great movie.
Back when he was good. Yeah. So I was just doing some research on Stan, the character Stan from Deer Hunter, and basically there's some theories that his erratic, unpredictable behavior and the dynamic of the group was a metaphor for the erratic, unpredictable Vietnam War and affected these people in a similar way. It's kind of interesting.
I'm good with that.
But
there's some great scenes where they just as friends go up. They had these hunting trips each year, and they go up, and De Niro's character is like one shot. When you're hunting, you take the deer out, one shot, and it's just powerful. They were there, that camaraderie. We've all had that, or if you're lucky, you've had that where you had a group of guys, and you maybe in high school or a place where you worked, where you just hung out and it was just good friendship, and that comes across real well. Very powerful movie, The Deer Hunter.
So basically, he gets diagnosed with lung cancer in 1977. He was a chain smoker. Tries a number of treatments, just doesn't work. His cancer metastasized to his bones. March 13th, 1978, he dies. Meryl Streep was like completely devoted to him the whole time.
Yeah.
Pacino mentioned how it was just really moving to see how devoted to him she was when he died.
And she spent 2 years with him. I mean, she's listed here 2 years, 76 to 78. His partner, his love interest.
Yeah. And his so basically Cazale dies. Playwright, close friend and collaborator Israel Horovitz, who by the way is the father of Ad Rock, King Ad Rock, motherfucker, Adam Horovitz in the house.
That's what I'm screaming.
His father was a good friend of John Cazale and wrote a eulogy for him in the Village Voice. So why don't we close out with the eulogy? Nice. Here's the eulogy from King Ad Rock's pops. Yeah, I wonder if this is the guy who smokes 2 packs a day.
Possibly.
Probably, yeah. All right, anyways.
That hypocrite.
Yeah. Israel Horovitz on John Cazale after John Cazale passes in the Village Voice, published March 27th, 1978. John Cazale happens once in a lifetime. He was an invention, a small perfection. It is no wonder his friends feel such anger upon waking from their sleep to discover that Cazale sleeps with kings and counselors, with Booth and Keene, with Jimmy Dean, with Bernhardt, Guthrie and Deuce, whoever those people are, with Stanislavski and Groucho and Benny and Allen. He will make fast friends in his new place. He is easy to love.
Nice.
John Cazale, ladies and gentlemen.
John Cazale. So go see these 5 movies.
We'll
I
link them
think,
in the click pit. I'm
yeah,
sure most of you who are listening have seen them, but for the 1% that haven't,
I would
well,
say
watch them again. Watch them
these
again if you
movies,
have. Fuck off. You need to
these
watch them again.
movies are going to be talked about and referenced till the end of the ability to watch movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Stop
Dog Day
watching.
Afternoon.
Stop watching crap and watch this stuff.
Yeah.
This is the good shit.
So, anyway, that's all I got.
Yeah, there you have it. Another episode in the books. We got plenty scheduled. We got a full schedule up through into March and
Into
into,
March, yeah.
well into March.
Episode 51, kids.
This was episode
John
51.
Cazale.
Yeah, John Cazale. Check him out. Peace out.
Deuces.